we have with us OECD Tax Policy Director. We call him the man in the hot seat, Mr. Pascal, and of course we have Dinesh, Kanabar, Dhruva Advisors founder. We both will be interviewing him, putting you some quick rapid fire questions. Pascal, to start with. We've seen your press release on the MLI. Of course, it's historic. 100 plus countries signing up to the multilateral instrument. 2 years back, people thought that
it was not possible.
Not possible, crazy, wish list, not going to happen. It's happened. Great, happy?
Yes, we are very happy that it was concluded on time, on budget. Indeed, nobody believed in that, but we've done it. I think it's a masterpiece because it will allow the modification of all bilateral treaties of the signatories. It has not yet been signed. The signing ceremony will be in June. What has been decided is that we have a text ready to be signed. Now, countries need to do the homework, need to identify possible reservations, to match this bilaterally. There is a lot of work in the next 6 months, but in June we'll have a significant number of countries, and this will be great for BEPS implementation because it means that the treaties will be BEPS compatible. In other words, this is the end of treaty shopping.
Yeah. For people like me who've not had the courage to read the full text of the MLI, what would be the key highlights that you would want to tell our viewers? What are the key highlights?
The key highlight is that in this multilateral convention, we do have a provision that all the signatories will endorse, which will put an end to treaty shopping. That's Action 6 of the BEPS Action Plan. Treaties are not designed to be shopped. And for that, we needed anti-abuse provision. It is in the convention, and it will automatically amend the bilateral treaties to make sure that these bilateral treaties are now sound and are bulletproof, so they will not be abused any longer.
If I can ask you a question, first of all, this whole approach that treaties are meant for rates, shopping, etc., moving to a more principle-driven treaty is very, very welcome. But what I find is that over the last few months, the world has become actually more insular. So we have the Brexit, we have Trumpism, for want of a better word, and countries are becoming, France, everybody is becoming more and more insular and bilateral as opposed to multilateral. How do you see the world moving in one direction? And OECD, do you think it's just too late for it to be really multilateral?
That's a very good question indeed. And my view on that, and that's not wishful thinking, is that even in a world which is becoming more insular, and you're probably right, actually to protect their sovereignties, countries need to cooperate. So tax cooperation remains at the core of what countries need to do, whether they want to go for opening up, trade, or to become more insular. Because if you become more insular, you want to ensure your sovereignty. But the world is globalized, whether you like it or not. And as a result, you need to cooperate with the other countries. And in that sense, this multilateralism is not dead. And the multilateral convention actually is multilateral in the sense that many countries will be able to sign it. But it's about amending bilateral treaties. So paradoxically, in this changing environment, I think we still need cooperation, and even more so as countries will be willing to protect their sovereignties.
So if I come in further, one of the things which we in India, and you know how litigation tends to be in India, quite different from what you would see in most countries. So we're looking at a prospect of a multilateral instrument, a bilateral instrument, and carve-ins, carve-outs, notifications with it. And sometimes I wonder whether for tax authorities, for courts to interpret these three together is going to be a real nightmare.
I don't think so. It's not simple, but treaties are not simple. And what's happening is that if you read the text of the multilateral instrument, Arun, you need to go beyond the press release.
I have.
But if you do so, it may look complex, but actually it is designed to be read in a bilateral context. And when you will read it in a bilateral context, meaning taking the treaty between India and whoever else, then you will see that the provisions are much more simple to understand, and they will just simply amend the bilateral treaty. So I think we have here a very effective instrument. I mean, killing 2,000 birds with one stone, and this now needs to be done by June in terms of signing and then ratifying quickly.
You know what we would call arrow that kills 2,000 people? You will call it a special weapon, like a Brahmastra.
Demonetization.
Demonetization.
no comment on that, please.
Pascal, I did go through the 39 pages at 6 in the morning, and actually called up a senior IRS officer in India for a comment at 6:30 in the morning. One of the things that struck me, quickly glancing through it, was the opt-out provision. There are quite a few people who are asking, does an opt-out mean that different countries can cherry pick? Can they cherry pick some of the things that they like and not implement the things that they like? At the same time, Jeffrey said,
are not mandatory.
Yeah, Jeffrey said that the minimum standards are, of course, mandatory. Could you just explain how the opt-outs are going to work?
Okay, the purpose of the multilateral instrument is to translate the tax treaty BEPS-related measures.
Yeah.
We have a few. We have something on hybrid mismatches, something on mutual agreement procedures.
Permanent
We do have the minimum standard on Action 6.
Yes.
And, of course, the permanent establishment. Action 6 was a minimum standard, which means that you cannot reserve on that, and on that one there will be no opt-out, unless your treaties are already up to the standard, in which case there is no need to amend them.
Correct.
So that's something that all the countries will have to sign on. The rest is optional. You can opt in, opt out. The purpose of this is to give a tool for countries. It will be for countries to decide what to do, and we'll match this on a bilateral basis. What we can tell you from the preliminary work that we have been carried out is that countries have a lot of appetite to amend their treaties. They don't want to wait 30 years, and not only on the minimum standard.
Will the opt-outs be minimal, Pascal? Do you think that largely 100 countries will agree to implement 85 to 90% of the action plans, and the opt-outs might be minimal?
This is something we'll see, so this is to be seen in the coming months. On Action 6, which is the minimum standard, which is the one which really matters most, there will be no reservation, unless the treaties are already to the standard, but this is not a reservation. On the rest, we are confident that countries want to amend their treaties.
And then on the items where there is a choice, where you have choices to make, you could go to one of the three alternatives that is provided. Again, that might probably not permit consistency.
It will permit consistency because at the end of the day it's a bilateral match. So what you need to have in mind, and that's the paradox of this instrument, it's a multilateral instrument,
And yet
but to be read in a bilateral context.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, the truth is in the bilateral match, and there will be a bilateral match for each of the signatories.
Pascal, one of the points that seems to emerge is, and which you mentioned at Madrid as well, that we are watching the competent authorities, the G20 is going to review them, that we are going to do a peer review of MAP, and therefore the competent authorities like you are also on the hot seat. They are being watched by the big brother, the big boss as they call it.
Yes,
so,
they are.
Is there going to be a lot more pressure for them to deliver solutions?
Yes, there will, and that's precisely...
And no more deadlocks.
And that's precisely the purpose of Action 14 being a minimum standard. Countries have not been good. And I say it in India, which is true for India, but it's not limited to India. Look at the number of OECD or non-OECD countries. Countries are not good at eliminating double taxation. Why so? There are many reasons for that, but the main is that they don't feel compelled to do so. A minimum standard with a public review and a reporting to the G20 will make sure that tax commissioners pay attention and deliver on that.
But 100 APAs and 100 maps with US should be soothing to
You
a
see, it's already doing much better, and I think things will go
Last
fine.
question from me before I hand it over to Dinesh is the US President-elect Donald Trump has named his Treasury Secretary,
Yes.
Steve Mnuchin. We are still eagerly waiting to see who replaces Mr. Bob Stack. What are you expecting from the US tax policy, from the new US administration on the tax policy front? Are you nervous?
No, we think that finally the conditions are gathered to have a tax policy reform, including on the international field. What the reform will be, we don't know yet, and that's something we are eager to look at. But the good news is that there will be a tax reform that the US badly needs.
You're confident of cooperation with them? That they will cooperate?
I do think that the tax reform will actually facilitate the debate with the other countries, whatever the tax reform is. If it's a pure source system, then there will be a need to debate with other countries. If it's a more traditional move to territoriality and of check the box, that's the missing piece of the BEPS puzzle.
Dinesh, my last question.
A question from my side would be really, India has a judicial system which is into a silo of its own. I'm hoping that with a treaty which is multilateral, maybe there's a uniform application of the treaty by the judiciary all over the world, because they're all reading from the same instrument and maybe they'll interpret it in a consistent manner.
That may be the trend in the future, but again, these are bilateral instruments modified by a multilateral one. The benefit of the multilateral one is that we have one explanatory statement, we have one approach, which indeed could help the judicial system. Interestingly, in the G20 in Berlin yesterday, all the countries said that a good functioning judicial system is core to ensuring tax certainty, and in that field, India is not doing that.
Thank you, Pascal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.